In this video, I'll show you 7 signs that pornography has destroyed your life and how you can get rid of it in 2026. Stay with me until the end and let's understand how addiction affects your reality, your achievements, and especially your dreams. Let's get straight to the point. Sign 1. You no longer feel aroused by reality. You see a beautiful woman walking past you. The kind of woman who, a few years ago, would have made you straighten your posture, correct your gaze, maybe even smile without realizing it. But now? Nothing. You register that she's beautiful, yes. Your brain aesthetically recognizes that body, that face, but the inner spark, the masculine impulse to approach, to get to know, to seduce, has disappeared. What was once instinct has now become an obligation. You feign interest, force conversation, blame yourself for not reacting as you should. And the worst part is that you know something is wrong, but you can't name it. It's not shyness, it's not fear of rejection. It's a collapse of desire. The problem is that nobody told you that desire is also educated. And yours was trained by the worst possible teacher, an infinite, free, bizarre, and consequence-free stimulus system. When you get used to porn as your main source of pleasure, your brain, in the name of efficiency, starts creating a shortcut. Instead of seeing a real woman and feeling desire, it seeks the internal reference you've reinforced the most. Screen, perfect angle, perfect light, fake moans, unreal bodies, impossible situations. And then the brutal contradiction arises. The more you consume the stimulus pattern, the less you react to the real world. The average woman, with stretch marks, insecurities, the smell of human skin, and a trembling voice, starts to seem less. Worse, it starts to seem like an effort. This dissatisfaction doesn't stem from a high standard, as many think. It stems from a destroyed dopaminergic system. Your brain no longer wants better women, it wants more intense stimulation. Novelty, shock, visual pressure. That's why you open 5 tabs at the same time. Jump from video to video, never finishing any, because it's not about pleasure but about escape. Escape from boredom, escape from reality, escape from yourself. And this isn't just behavior, it's neurochemistry. Each click releases dopamine. And each dopamine spike creates a valley of apathy right after. You're not addicted to pleasure. You're addicted to dopamine. This makes you insensitive to simple, natural, organic pleasure. The French philosopher Gilles Deleuze said that desire is a machine of production, not consumption. That is, desire doesn't exist to be passively fed, but to move you, to push you towards life, towards risk, towards human contact. Pornography reverses this cycle. It transforms desire into something that paralyzes you. You cease to be the protagonist and become a spectator of your own sexuality. And the price of this is extremely high. Because when you lose the ability to desire reality, you also lose the ability to connect with it. This absence of desire isn't just sexual. It spreads like mold across the walls of your existence. You begin to lose the will to socialize, to flirt, to go out, to expose yourself. Because you know, even unconsciously, that you won't feel anything, that there will be no lust, no fire, no impulse. And that shames you. It diminishes you. You, who were born with the masculine spark of conquest, now need to convince yourself to leave your den. And often, you don't even try anymore. You give up on the arena. And what remains is the screen. Because on it, you still react, you still function, you still feel something, even if it's artificial. But here's the most dangerous part. Your brain begins to accept this model of pleasure as the new normal. You stop seeking the real. You stop getting frustrated. You stop trying. And little by little, you settle into a life without real desire. You become a functional zombie. You fulfill your tasks, pay your bills, but your vital energy has been diverted to a parallel universe of pixels, fantasies, and dead impulses. This isn't about stopping watching pornography out of moralism or religion. It's about understanding that your arousal is a compass. If it's pointing into the void, it's because you've lost your way. And no one will rescue you from this labyrinth but yourself. Relearning to desire is relearning to live. And perhaps the first step is accepting that the strongest pleasure lies not in the intensity of the stimulus, but in the depth of presence. Because when you feel aroused again by a real woman, with her imperfections, her silences, her touches, that's when you recover not only your masculinity, but your humanity. Sign 2. You've lost the ability to maintain eye contact. There's a kind of shame that doesn't scream. It reveals itself in the smallest details. A glance away, a restless hand movement, an out-of-place laugh. You're in front of someone, especially a woman, and for some reason you can't explain, the simple act of holding eye contact seems impossible. It's not that you don't want to, it's that there's something about you that can't be seen. As if her gaze were a mirror, and you were afraid of what might appear there. This type of reaction doesn't come from shyness, it comes from a deep feeling of hiding something. You look away because you feel that if she looks too much, she'll notice. She'll notice your guilt. She'll see the addiction. She'll see through your words, your clothes, your appearance, and see what you do when you're alone. This is the cruel paradox of pornography. It promises you pleasure without exposure, but it transforms you into a man who can no longer expose himself. A man who always needs to avoid direct eye contact, because direct eye contact demands presence, and presence demands truth. Do you know why this is destructive? Because eye contact is the foundation of all meaningful human communication. It's how we transmit security, desire, attention. It's how we create sexual tension. A well-sustained gaze can say more than 1,000 words. It can ignite the atmosphere. It can generate connection. But when you lose that, you become a ghost. Physically present, emotionally absent. And people notice. They don't know exactly what's wrong, but they feel it. They say there's something strange about you. And the strange thing, in fact, is the absence of soul in your eyes. Body language, as studies by Albert Mehrabian have already shown, represents more than 70% of our communication. And eye contact is one of the pillars of that. When you can't sustain that gaze, you lose authority, you lose connection, you lose charisma. You can have the best speech in the world, the best intentions, but seem insecure, false, or even dishonest. This destroys your social image, and even more so, your self-perception, because you start to believe that there is indeed something wrong with you. And this is where the vicious cycle begins. You avoid the gaze, feel ashamed of it, isolate yourself, return to pornography, reinforce the guilt, and avoid the gaze again. It's a cycle of emotional death. And the more you run away, the more you lose the emotional strength to sustain vulnerability. Because that's what the gaze demands. Vulnerability. You need to be whole there, not just with your body, but with your mind, with your emotions. And pornography destroys exactly that layer of emotional presence. It transforms you into a fragmented man, whole only when no one is watching. In Sartre's existentialist philosophy, there is the idea of the gaze of the other as that which defines us. For him, we are shaped when we realize we are being observed. It is at that moment that we become aware of ourselves. But if you avoid that gaze, you run away from yourself. You no longer see yourself reflected in the other person. And then, what remains is emptiness. You lose your sense of real identity. And again, this isn't just a social issue. This is seduction. A woman senses when a man is comfortable being seen. She feels security, magnetism, tension. And she also senses when the man is trying to hide something. And it doesn't matter how much he smiles, compliments, or speaks beautifully. If his eyes are wandering, she notices. Not consciously, but she moves away. The attraction disappears, the connection dies. And then you reinforce the belief that you're not good enough, that women don't like you, that something is broken in you. When in reality, what's broken is your ability to be present, to endure the discomfort of real human contact. And that, yes, is serious. Because when you can no longer stand before another person without avoiding, without running away, you become a prisoner of a version of yourself that lives eternally in fear of being discovered. But here's the brutal truth. No one will discover you if you don't have the courage to look at yourself. Pornography stole your gaze, but it can't stop you from getting it back. It will be uncomfortable at first. Holding eye contact, letting the silence exist, feeling the tension of being whole in someone's presence. But that's where the transformation begins. Not when you avoid judgment, but when you face the world with the courage of someone who no longer needs to hide. Sign 3. You need increasingly extreme stimuli. In the beginning, everything was simpler. A suggestive image, a common video, a mild stimulus was enough to ignite the body and provoke an intense reaction. But over time, you realize that what was once enough no longer works. What was once exciting is now boring. Your body's natural response has disappeared, replaced by a strange emptiness. And to fill this hole, you go deeper. You choose longer, more intense, more bizarre videos. With each click, you need more, and more, and more. Until, without realizing it, you are consuming content that shames you, that scares you, that goes against everything you believe in, but that somehow continues to hold you captive. This is not a moral problem, it's a chemical problem. It's the natural functioning of your brain under the effects of addiction. Pornography acts on the reward system, releasing massive doses of dopamine, the neurotransmitter that regulates pleasure, motivation, and learning. But the brain, in its biological ingenuity, seeks balance. When dopamine levels are constantly high, the receptors begin to desensitize. The result? What once gave you pleasure now leaves you indifferent. And what excites you needs to be increasingly intense, more shocking, more extreme. You're not wanting something more bizarre because you like it. You need it because your system has been hacked. This progression is nothing new. Any neuroscientist, any addiction specialist, any psychologist with real experience will tell you the same thing. The addicted brain demands ever-increasing doses to feel the same effect. And pornography, being an unlimited source of stimulation, becomes the perfect drug. You can access it in seconds, choose any fetish, switch endlessly, experience the impossible, and this reprograms your brain until reality becomes insufficient. The real woman, with her unpredictable movements, her emotional timing, her human limitations, begins to seem slow, boring, uninteresting, because it can't compete with the infinite variety of the screen, and that destroys you inside. You start having fantasies you don't recognize, impulses that scare you, thoughts that shame you. And after each session, the same cycle comes. Shame, disgust, guilt. You look in the mirror and don't understand how you got there. You don't understand how that content, which you yourself would condemn, has now become necessary for you to get aroused. And here's the cruelest detail. It's not about pleasure. It's about anesthesia. You want to switch off. You want to disconnect. You want to forget, for a few seconds, the emptiness, the tiredness, the anxiety. But the only thing you manage to do is sink even deeper into a cycle of stimulation and repulsion, momentary pleasure and lasting disgust. Sign 4. You no longer function with a real person. There's a moment in a man's life when the blow comes silently, but profoundly. It's when he's there with a real woman, desired, perhaps even loved, and he simply can't. His body doesn't respond. His mind freezes. Desire evaporates, and shame enters like a tsunami. It must have been the stress, maybe the alcohol. The excuses are automatic. But, deep down, he knows. The truth doesn't shout, it whispers. And the whisper says, you are broken. The problem is that you function perfectly in front of a screen. There, in the safety of the bedroom, without risk, without intimacy, without exchange, your body obeys. Your brain responds. The erection appears as if nothing is wrong. But everything is wrong. What was supposed to be an exception has become the rule. And what was supposed to be connection has become performance. You no longer react to the touch of someone of flesh and blood, only to digital stimulation, to the click, to the command. This has a name. It's pornography-induced erectile dysfunction. And no, this isn't a theory. It's an epidemic. Thousands, perhaps millions of men, many still in their 20s, are facing this invisible collapse. Young men who should be at the peak of their sexual potency, but who can no longer sustain an erection in front of a real woman. And not because they are sick, but because they have been reprogrammed. Pornography has installed another operating system. A system in which desire doesn't come from touch, voice, smell, or sight, but from the screen, the speed, the manufactured fantasy. And here lies the fatal blow. The body understands the world through repetition. If you train a muscle every day, it grows. If you condition your mind to react only to digital stimuli, it unlearns how to respond to reality. The real woman is unpredictable. She doesn't pause. She doesn't skip a scene. She doesn't edit. She demands presence, rhythm, exchange. And this, for the addicted brain, is too much effort. It prefers the shortcut, the sure stimulus, the quick reward, pleasure on demand. But reality doesn't bend to your desire. And that's why she starts to seem boring, slow, useless. But this illusion is deadly, because it's not about sex. It's about presence, about trust, about connection. And when you realize you can no longer be fully present with someone, you start to feel less of a man. Your masculinity becomes a distant memory. And that affects everything. Your self-esteem, your posture, your voice, your walk, You carry the constant feeling of being indebted, of being a fraud. And when that sets in, everything around you collapses. You avoid new relationships. You run from intimacy. Or worse, you enter into shallow relationships where you don't need to prove anything. And even those in committed relationships begin to face the abyss. The partner feels the distance, feels that you are there, but you're not. And if she discovers, as so many do, that pornography occupies the space that was meant to be hers, the damage is profound. The betrayal is not physical, but emotional. It's the pain of realizing you've been replaced by an illusion, and that leaves a mark. Sign 5. You've lost your joy in real life. Waking up and feeling like the day is already meaningless. Looking at commitments, goals, obligations, and everything seems too heavy. The feeling of being alive but disconnected. Of breathing but not feeling the air. Of being surrounded by opportunities, people, stimuli, and yet wanting nothing. This isn't laziness, it's not a lack of discipline. This is a collapse of the reward system. And yes, it too has been hijacked by pornography. Dopamine is the fuel of human motivation. It's what makes us get out of bed, pursue a goal, resist pain for the pleasure of achievement. But when you give it away daily to pornography, an intense, immediate, effortless stimulus, everything else in life starts to seem insufficient. You attend a class and get bored. You go to the gym and feel nothing. You try to read a book and don't get past the first page. You try to talk to someone and feel numb. Because your brain has learned that true pleasure doesn't come from achievement, from the process, from building. It comes from the click, from the instant reward. And everything that requires effort starts to seem useless. Have you ever noticed how, after a pornography session, the world becomes grayer? How energy disappears, focus fades, the will to act dissolves? This is not a coincidence. This is the collapse of your dopamine. You've forced your system to release so much artificial pleasure that now it no longer responds to natural stimuli. What once gave pleasure, an intense workout, an interesting conversation, good music, a passionate kiss, now no longer moves anything within you. Life has lost its flavor, because you traded wine for refined sugar, the profound for the superficial, the real for the virtual. And the cruelest part, this doesn't happen all at once. The death of pleasure is slow, insidious, disguised as tiredness, lack of enthusiasm, lack of focus. But what lies behind all this is a silent chemical addiction. You're not lacking energy because you're working too hard. You're lacking energy because your brain is burning dopamine without replenishment. It's feeding on intense peaks that aren't accompanied by emotional growth. And without growth, no pleasure lasts. Only a hangover. Sign 6. The shame that silently corrodes. The worst prison has no walls, no bars. It's invisible. It lives inside you. And the name of that cell is shame. But not that superficial shame of a social mistake, a poorly chosen word, a slip-up. No. It's a shame that paralyzes, that consumes, that weighs on your chest like a stone you can't remove. A shame that makes you look away in the mirror, as if you can't bear to face the man you've become. The cruelest thing is that this shame didn't arrive all at once. It was built up, click after click, tab after tab, video after video. At first it was just curiosity, then it became habit, then necessity. And now it's a secret you protect tooth and nail, because you know that if the world knew, it would judge you. But the worst judgment is already happening, and it comes from within. You promised to stop, many times, and you broke each of those promises. At first, it was just frustration. But then it turned into self-hatred. Because now it's not just about pornography anymore, it's about what it says about you. You feel like you've failed as a man, that you've lost control, that you're at the mercy of something you yourself nurtured, and that kills you inside. Shame is insidious. It doesn't attack you head-on, it whispers, you're weak, you're disgusting. If they find out who you really are, no one will respect you. These voices become part of your internal dialogue, and over time, you believe them. You start acting according to them. You avoid intimacy. You run from connection. You isolate yourself. Because deep down, you feel you don't deserve to be seen. You don't deserve to be loved. Because you're dirty, and that pushes you even further away from the world. You try to compensate. You try to be impeccable at work. You try to be nice to everyone. You try to control everything. Because, unconsciously, you want to prove to yourself and to others that you're still worth something. But the more perfectionism, the more anxiety. The more control, the more wear and tear. The more you wear yourself down, the greater the urge to escape. And where do you run to? To the same shit that puts you in this spiral. It's a perfect psychological trap. You feel guilty, seek relief, give in to addiction, feel guilty again, and the cycle closes. Shame feeds on itself. And silence is the fertilizer. You don't tell anyone because you're afraid, because you think you're the only one. But you're not. The truth that nobody talks about is that this epidemic of shame is silently corroding thousands of men. Unresolved shame becomes emotional toxicity. It starts to leak into everything. Your relationships, your posture, your decisions. You sabotage yourself because you think you don't deserve it anymore. You don't commit to anything deeply. Because you feel that if someone truly knows you, they will reject you. And this fear contaminates everything you touch. Even your spirituality. Sign 7. Wasted time and irreversible pain. Have you ever stopped to count? How many hours of your life have been consumed by this addiction? How many entire days have you spent in front of a screen seeking pleasure that doesn't even last 5 minutes? How many relationships have you missed? How many opportunities have you not seized? How many versions of yourself, stronger, more confident, more alive, have you failed to become because you chose anesthesia instead of challenge? This is the hidden price of pornography. It not only hijacks the present, it sabotages the future. It makes you live in cycles, starting and stopping, promising and failing, dreaming and forgetting. It transforms your timeline into a vicious circle. And when you look back, everything seems blurry. You even remember the momentary pleasure, but it no longer warms you. Because there is no affection, no feeling, just a series of lapses that left emptiness instead of marks. And here is the most brutal blow. The time you lost never comes back. It cannot be recycled, remade, or recovered. It's gone. Forever. It hurts. It hurts more than any criticism, any rejection, any failure. Because time is the only asset that once spent can never be rebuilt. You can recover money, you can replenish energy. But time? Time is buried, irretrievable. Pornography made you waste time without realizing it, and when you did realize it, it was too late, and that generates guilt. A guilt that mixes with regret, and that turns into anger. Anger at yourself, at the world, at life. But this anger doesn't build, it only paralyzes, because you know you can't go back in time. But here's the brutal twist. If there's no way to go back, there is a way to prevent more time from being wasted, and that decision needs to be made today, not tomorrow. Because every new day you don't decide is another day you abandon. The Roman philosopher Seneca wrote a treatise called On the Shortness of Life, where he said, "It is not that we have little time in life, but that we waste much of it." You are not living little, you are living poorly. And that's worse, because it's not the finitude that hurts the most, it's the realization that you wasted the eternity contained in each moment. And addiction does this masterfully. It transforms your eternity into nothing. While you were consuming pornography, other men were building empires, sculpting bodies, cultivating families, traveling, making mistakes, trying, succeeding, living. You were clicking, alone, in the dark, with your hand on your phone and your spirit disconnected. While they accumulated memories, you accumulated open tabs. While they felt true pleasure, you sought instant relief. And now you look back and see a hole. But let me tell you a brutal truth. Your brain doesn't change with willpower. It changes with reprogramming, with method, with a new reward system that replaces artificial pleasure with real achievements. And that's exactly why we created the Forbidden Manual, How to Trigger Desire in 60 Seconds. This isn't just an audiobook. It's a mental, strategic, and practical training ground. In it, you'll learn to master the triggers of real attraction. The kind that reignites your natural magnetism, destroys shame, and restores your confidence with real women. But it doesn't stop there. Within the exclusive combo, you'll also receive the Anti-Porn Manual, a surgical and to-the-point guide with the exact tactics that reprogram your brain, break the vicious cycle of pornography, and install new circuits of healthy desire, emotional connection, and unbeatable discipline. It's not theory. It's a system. And it's ready to be activated by you now. Your life can be divided into 2 moments, before listening to this audiobook and after putting each strategy into practice. There is only one future for those who continue to procrastinate. more emptiness, more wasted time, more distance from the person you could be. But there is also the future of those who decide to invest in themselves, now, and transform shame into power. That moment is now. The opportunity is before your eyes.